because it was the one and only photograph that would, so we would have some kind of connection. The music of both our beings wasn't quite right. So, God, I look at myself up there and I look awful.
See, that's what I was talking about earlier.
Nastassja Kinski, the embodiment of fragility and mystery in European cinema, first appeared on screen with a silent gaze that captivated audiences and left them wondering, who is this enigmatic figure? At 14, her very first scene made adults blush, and by 15, she was already stirring controversy across Germany. By 18, she was standing at the peak of her career, a Golden Globe in hand, and becoming the most sought-after European face in Hollywood during the 80s. But fame came with its own costs. She was once detained for youthful mistakes and spoke openly about a childhood scarred by abuse at the hands of her father. Her journey was marked by complicated relationships, and she once confessed, "I felt exploited by the very industry that celebrated me." From iconic roles in Tess, Cat People, and Paris, Texas to her sudden disappearance from the screen, one question lingered. Why did she vanish? An unforgettable face, a life tinged with regret. This is the story of an icon like no other. Nastassja Kinski was born on January 24, 1961, in Berlin, Germany, under the birth name Nastassja Kinski. But her legacy goes far beyond her birth date. She was the only daughter of Klaus Kinski, a legendary and notoriously controversial figure in German cinema, whose name alone stirred both awe and fear. Klaus was an artist of remarkable brilliance but was equally infamous for his volatile temper, explosive outbursts, and extreme lifestyle. Her mother, Ruth Bridget Tocky, had no ties to the arts and led a much quieter, more reclusive life. Their stark differences led to a short-lived marriage. When Nastassja was just 8 years old, her parents divorced. Klaus left the family and quickly moved on to another woman. Ruth raised Nastassja alone, in poverty, in Munich, with no stable job to lean on. By 13, Nastassja had become the family's primary breadwinner, taking on small acting roles and modeling gigs to support her mother. But no matter how far she was from her father, his influence never quite faded. Klaus Kinski was a brilliant but disturbed artist, known not only for his talent but for his shocking behavior. In his memoirs, he described actions that crossed every boundary, violence, sexual abuse, and more. His name was forever stained by accusations of sexually abusing members of his own family, shocking the artistic community and the public. Years later, Nastassja would publicly reveal that she, too, had been abused by her father, an incredibly rare and deeply disturbing admission that forced the world to reassess her life and career in an entirely new light. The emotional scars from this family trauma shaped every aspect of her life, and especially how she entered the film industry, chaotic, unsettled, and searching for stability. As a teenager in Munich, Nastassja found herself in trouble with the law. She was caught multiple times riding public transportation without a ticket. When she failed to pay the fines or perform community service, she was detained for 5 days. At the time of her detainment, Kinski was already gaining popularity in Germany. The news of a young actress being held for a minor offense quickly attracted media attention. However, Kinski chose to remain silent, refusing to give in to public scrutiny. She was released early for good behavior, and this event marked one of the first signs of her independent spirit, a defining trait that would characterize her public persona. A small scar on her left cheek, a result of an accident when she was 15, became one of her most recognizable features. On screen, this imperfection added to her enigmatic charm, making her beauty all the more unforgettable. Nastassja's childhood was anything but typical. Instead of attending school or playing in the yard, she spent her early years on film sets, exposed to the adult world of cinema. This early exposure to the complexities of the industry shaped her into someone who kept the media at a distance, fiercely independent, and consistently maintained a sense of mystery. Kinski wasn't afraid to take on bold and unconventional roles. She never felt the need to explain herself or her choices, which is part of what made her such a unique figure in cinema, unusual, striking, and impossible to define. She entered the film industry at a remarkably young age. At just 14, she was discovered in a nightclub in Munich by actress Lisa Kreutzer, the wife of director Wim Wenders. Following this encounter, Wenders offered Kinski a role in The Wrong Move, Falsche Bewegung, in 1975, without the need for an audition. In the film, she portrayed Mignon, a mute girl who joins the main character on a journey across Germany. Though she had no dialogue, Kinski captivated audiences with her expressive eyes and subtle body language. This first role marked the beginning of her career and established the enigmatic persona that would follow her throughout her life. A silent, mysterious beauty, always hinting at more beneath the surface. In 1977, Kinski appeared in the Tatit episode Reifat Zeugnis, directed by Wolfgang Petersen. She played Sina Wolf, a young student involved in a complicated relationship with her teacher. When a fellow student threatens to expose the affair, Sina takes drastic steps to protect her secret. At the age of 15, Kinski participated in sensitive scenes, including nudity, which sparked considerable public debate due to her young age. The episode garnered over 25 million viewers and became one of the most talked about Tatit episodes in history. Though Kinski was known for her silence in the face of controversy, she later spoke about her discomfort with certain scenes from her early work. She mentioned that she had requested some parts not be aired, offering one of the rare glimpses into her thoughts on her early career. It was a reflection of her tendency to quietly navigate the challenges of her industry. Into the Devil, a Daughter, 1976, a Hammer Films production, Kinski played Catherine, a young girl raised in a mysterious cult. Her performance showcased emotional depth, further solidifying her reputation as a serious actress. During this time, Kinski caught the attention of director Roman Polanski, who was impressed by her natural beauty and acting instincts. Polanski advised her to move to the US to study at the prestigious Lee Strasberg Theatre and Film Institute, renowned for its Stanislavski-based acting methods. For Kinski, this was an opportunity to broaden her career and break free from the European cinema mold. Kinski took Polanski's advice, moving to the US and beginning formal acting training, something she had never experienced before. After completing her studies, she returned to Europe, ready to embark on a dazzling new phase in her career. The early 1980s marked a brief but brilliant period in her life, with many believing she was poised to become the global face of cinema. In 1978, Kinski starred alongside the legendary Marcello Mastroianni in the Italian romantic drama Così come sei, Stay as You Are. The film explored the relationship between a middle-aged man and a younger woman, and Kinski's mature, natural performance impressed both critics and audiences. This role helped open doors for more significant international projects. Shortly thereafter, she reunited with Roman Polanski for the film Tess, 1979, an adaptation of Thomas Hardy's Tess of the D'Urbervilles. Polanski dedicated the film to his late wife, Sharon Tate, in a touching tribute. This collaboration was pivotal in solidifying Kinski's status as an international star. In Tess, Kinski portrayed the tragic character of Tess, a poor country girl caught in a series of misfortunes that overwhelm her. Her performance was praised for its depth, fragility, and inner strength, capturing a complexity that made the role feel like it was made for her. The role earned her a Golden Globe in 1981 for New Star of the Year, actress, solidifying her place in global cinema. No longer just a curious European face, Kinski was now seen as a serious contender among Hollywood's finest. Following the success of Tess, she was cast in One from the Heart, 1981, directed by Francis Ford Coppola. This marked her first American film and was one of the most anticipated projects after Apocalypse Now. However, the project didn't go as expected. What was initially planned as a modest production quickly ballooned in scale and budget as Coppola aimed to reinvent cinematic language. He chose to shoot the entire film on an artificial Las Vegas set, using theatrical lighting and surreal backdrops to create a dreamlike atmosphere. The budget grew to over $25 million, far exceeding the original estimate of $2 million. Despite Kinski's rising fame in Europe, she was still relatively unknown in Hollywood, and her co-star, Frederick Forrest, was not a household name either. The film's unconventional artistic choices, slow pacing, and lack of major box office stars made it difficult for American audiences to embrace. The film's release strategy was also lacking, with minimal marketing and little anticipation generated prior to its debut. When One from the Heart was released, it grossed only about $600,000, marking one of the biggest financial disappointments of the early 1980s. The film's failure led to significant financial strain on Coppola's Zoetrope Studios and created skepticism among investors regarding auteur-driven projects. Though Kinski was not the primary reason for the film's failure, her association with the film led some to view her career with caution moving forward. In 1982, Kinski returned to the screen in Cat People, a remake of the 1942 horror classic. She played Irina, a young woman cursed with a strange affliction that causes her to transform into a Black Panther when overcome with desire. It was a challenging role, blending seduction, mystery, tragedy, and danger. Directed by Paul Schrader, Cat People embraced bold visuals, using lighting, color, and set design to create a dark and atmospheric tone. The film combined supernatural elements with raw, primal emotions, creating a story that defied categorization. It was both a horror film and a metaphor for emotional repression. The film sparked debate due to its daring content and the portrayal of a female character who broke away from conventional norms. Though it wasn't a box office hit, Cat People further cemented Kinski's image as an actress who was unafraid of challenging roles and never played it safe. Her portrayal of Irina captured an otherworldly allure, captivating yet elusive. The film marked an important step in her evolution as one of the most enigmatic stars of the 1980s. The most significant artistic turning point in Kinski's career came in 1984 when she reunited with director Wim Wenders for Paris, Texas, one of the masterpieces of American independent cinema. The film moved at a slow pace, relying on sparse dialogue and long silences, yet it carried a rare emotional weight. Kinski's role as Jane Henderson, a woman who had abandoned her husband and son, was a pivotal moment in the film. Appearing only near the end, Kinski delivered one of the most emotional performances of her career. In a heart-wrenching scene, she speaks to her estranged husband, Travis, played by Harry Dean Stanton, through a one-way mirror. Without relying on grand gestures, Kinski's trembling voice and quiet vulnerability conveyed the painful depth of her character's past. This scene, often hailed as one of the most raw and poignant monologues of the 1980s, captured Kinski at her most emotionally exposed. There were no dramatic lighting effects or seductive imagery, just a woman facing the weight of her past. It was a performance stripped of pretense, emotionally bare, heart-wrenching, and unforgettable. Her presence needed no embellishment, no background score. Just the silence between her words and the intensity in her eyes, always on the verge of breaking, kept the viewer transfixed. Wim Wenders once said, "I didn't need many lines for Jane because with Nastassja, her eyes tell the whole story." Kinski's performance in Paris, Texas is often regarded as the pinnacle of her career, not because it was complex, but because it was quiet yet deep, like a scar that never healed on screen. Paris, Texas not only won the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival, but it also became a cinematic symbol of American loneliness. Kinski's portrayal of a woman grappling with the consequences of her own heartbreaking choices was hailed as one of the most haunting female characters in film, all without a single provocative scene. It was also the moment people began to understand Kinski more clearly. She didn't choose roles to shine. She chose characters that were imperfect, quietly broken, women who stood at the edge of the spotlight and turned them into the emotional center of the film, using nothing more than her silence and instinctive gaze. But the light only lasted so long. In 1985, Nastassja Kinski appeared in Revolution, a big-budget project that aimed to recreate the American Revolution on an epic scale. The film was directed by Hugh Hudson, who had previously found massive success with Chariots of Fire, and produced by Irwin Winkler, a name behind many of Hollywood's biggest hits. Kinski starred opposite Al Pacino, one of the most sought-after actors of the era. Everything seemed promising: an A-list cast, a large budget, and a historical narrative brimming with potential. But expectations quickly crumbled. When Revolution premiered, it not only disappointed audiences but became one of the most severe financial and artistic failures in British cinema of the 1980s. The film was harshly criticized for a disjointed script, inconsistent accents, sluggish pacing, and an emotionally flat narrative. Despite being set during one of the most pivotal periods in American history, Revolution failed to connect with viewers both emotionally and historically. No amount of visual investment could save its hollow core. The movie grossed less than $360,000 in the US, against a production budget nearing $28 million, making it one of the biggest losses of the time. But the damage went beyond box office numbers. This failure sparked a crisis of confidence among film investors in the UK, leading to bankruptcies of several production companies and a freeze on large-scale film projects for years to come. Director Hugh Hudson struggled to find major productions afterward, and Al Pacino, the film's central figure, faced backlash and chose to take a break from the screen to avoid further public scrutiny. As for Nastassja Kinski, though not the lead, her association with two consecutive high-profile flops, one from The Heart and Revolution, began to affect her reputation. Hollywood producers, while still acknowledging her talent and beauty, began to view her as a high-risk name. Despite the fact that her craft had been widely appreciated, the industry's focus on profit meant that her star began to fade. Big scripts came her way less often, and leading roles were often given to fresher faces. Although she continued acting from Revolution onward, Nastassja Kinski was no longer viewed as a rising icon, but rather a wildcard that Hollywood had grown cautious of. Throughout the peak of her career, Nastassja Kinski's relationships were just as captivating as her work on screen. She was romantically linked to three renowned directors, Roman Polanski, Wim Wenders, and Paul Schrader, men who had once placed her at the very center of their artistic worlds. Kinski's relationship with Roman Polanski began when they met at a party in Germany in 1976 when she was only 15. Polanski encouraged her to study acting at the Lee Strasberg Theatre and Film Institute in the US, and later cast her in the lead role of Tess, 1979, the film that earned her a Golden Globe. Although there was much speculation about a romantic relationship between them, Kinski has always denied any romantic involvement, stating that their connection was more of a professional nature, and that Polanski treated her with respect. Wim Wenders, the German director, was the first to see something truly special in Kinski, casting her in her debut role in The Wrong Move, 1975. Nearly a decade later, he again chose her for the pivotal role of Jane in Paris, Texas, a film that would go on to become one of the most celebrated films in her career. But theirs was more than just a director-actress collaboration. They shared a deep, unspoken understanding, never publicly confirmed but certainly felt. In interviews, Wim Wenders often spoke of Kinski with profound admiration, calling her the light I never wanted to lose. Kinski once remarked, "Wim and I don't need to talk to understand each other. We are silent together, and in that silence, there is love." It was this silent bond that allowed him to create cinematic moments that have since become unforgettable. Her role as Jane in Paris, Texas featured minimal dialogue. As Wenders put it, with Nastassja, her eyes are already a story. Kinski's expressive gaze conveyed far more than words ever could, which made her performance all the more powerful and haunting. Paul Schrader, the director of Cat People, 1982, was captivated by Kinski during filming. He once described her as the only actress I didn't dare to direct. Their connection grew, and Schrader even planned to propose to her at the wrap party. However, Kinski didn't show up. She abruptly cut off contact without any explanation, a move Schrader later reflected on as a personal heartbreak. Nastassja Kinski, much like the characters she portrayed, never stayed in one place for long. Her relationships, though impactful, were rarely public and never fully explained. She didn't speak about why things ended or about her personal life in detail. In a rare admission, she once said, "I need freedom more than love." It was this need for freedom, along with her silent yet powerful nature, that made people remember her, not just as an actress, but as a woman who never truly belonged to anyone. In 1984, Kinski married Egyptian filmmaker Ibrahim Musa after a brief period of dating. Just months earlier, she had given birth to her first child, Aljosha, born on June 29, 1984, from her relationship with actor Vincent Spano, her co-star in Maria's Lovers. Though the romance with Spano didn't last, they remained in touch afterward as friends. Kinski's marriage to Musa lasted until 1992, and they had a daughter, Sonia Kinski, born on March 2, 1986, who would later pursue a career as a model and actress. However, their marriage encountered significant challenges. After their divorce, Ibrahim Musa contested Kinski's plan to relocate with their children to the United States. In the summer of 1992, an Italian court granted full custody to Kinski, allowing her to move to California and begin a new chapter with her children. Not long after, Kinski began a relationship with the legendary music producer Quincy Jones, best known for his work with Michael Jackson. They lived together from 1992 to 1995, and had a daughter, Kenya Kinski Jones, born on February 9, 1993. Kenya has since become an international model and environmental activist, working with major brands like Calvin Klein, Stella McCartney, and appearing in Vogue. Even while living with Jones, Kinski maintained a separate apartment near UCLA, a choice that reflected her fiercely independent nature. Though they never legally married, Kinski and Jones shared a bond that remained private, and after their split, both chose to keep their personal lives out of the public eye. Kinski's personal life, while intertwined with prominent figures, was kept out of the media spotlight. She avoided tabloid gossip, never commented on rumors, and chose to protect her privacy. As she said, "I've lived enough in front of the lens, the rest I want to keep for myself." Kinski was never a star who chased fame or conformed to Hollywood's expectations. Instead, through her quiet presence and distinctive role choices, she became an unforgettable icon, representing a new kind of beauty, fragile, distant, and inaccessible. Director Wim Wenders once said, "With Nastassja, I didn't need to write much dialogue. Her silence was more powerful than words." Fluent in 5 languages, English, German, French, Italian, and Russian, Kinski took on diverse roles across international films, from Tess to Paris, Texas. She consistently portrayed complex, conflicted women, changing the way cinema depicted female characters. They weren't there to be loved or pitied. They had depth, pain, and inner lives that resonated. Beyond acting, Kinski explored photography and writing, holding several private exhibitions in Europe, where her images captured the same quiet, melancholic emotion that marked her cinematic roles. Kinski received numerous accolades, including a Golden Globe for Tess, a David Di Donatello Award, and nominations for the César and Nastro d'Argentu. However, her true success was not in trophies but in the emotional impact of her roles. She never sought validation or explanation, instead choosing to be present just enough, making her a silent icon, remembered by those who appreciate cinema. Though retired from acting, Kinski still appears at cultural events. In 2024, she attended the Berlinale and the Cinema for Peace Gala. On Instagram, she shares glimpses of her life, reflecting on simplicity and peace. Living quietly in California, she focuses on her garden, reading, and meditation while supporting social causes, particularly for underprivileged children and mental health awareness. At 64, Kinski enjoys a peaceful life, having chosen solitude over fame. She didn't seek constant brightness but rather a quiet, lasting light. Unlike others who continue creating for fame, Kinski chose to step away on her own terms, leaving behind a legacy of personal freedom and authenticity. Her choice to live true to herself invites reflection. Do you live to be seen, or do you live for yourself? Share your thoughts in the comments, and thanks for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe for more thoughtful stories that challenge our ideas of success.